Thank you. It's great to be here. And I want to talk to you today about a passion that I've been working on for 20 years. I've been working on this for so long that I actually had hair when I started. I used to look like Elvis. So this idea of civic ecology, this is about community systems that civil society, that citizens design and they imagine and they manage over time by themselves. Maybe they have outside experts that help them, but they're the inside experts. And so I want to frame my remarks about civic ecology with a quote from one of my favorite authors, Eugene Victor Walter, EV for short. Now, sadly, Mr. Walter passed away recently. In his obituary, he was listed as a professor, an author, and a magician. It's a pretty good combination of skills for the 21st century. But certainly a book that he wrote called Placeways, The Theory of the Human Environment, has been a magic book for me because in it, he astutely observed that today we're threatened with two kinds of environmental degradation. Pollution, which is the menace that we all understand and we hear about every day, but there's another part to it, and it's called loss of meaning. So pollution, this is this thing that we read about, we hear about. It's these messages of despair that every day we are bombarded with. Climate change, habitat loss, all of these really terrible things. Pollution, air pollution, loss of biodiversity. But loss of meaning? What does that have to do with environmental degradation? What does that have to do with sustainability? Well, actually, if you think about it, it almost has everything to do with it. Because this is about a loss of social capital, a loss of confidence in our public institutions, a loss of control over our own local resources. So this is pretty scary stuff. And this idea of civic ecology is designed to really address both aspects of Professor Walter's astute observation. Now, in order to do that, we have to do something that may sound simple, but is actually very difficult. We have to open up the black box of sustainability, or maybe I should say the green box of sustainability. Okay, so this is this paradigm that has arisen around the whole idea of sustainability, that it belongs to experts. Experts are going to figure out what the problems are, and they're going to figure out what the solutions are, and they're going to put them out there in the market, and we consumers are going to look them over, and if we like them, we think they're cool enough, we're going to replace our gray stuff with green stuff. So the idea about sustainability is that it's to make us all green consumers. I guess that's what's meant by the green economy. I hope not. I really do. So if we can get past this idea of buying our way into sustainability, I want to suggest that there's really two questions that then we're prepared to ask. One of them is, how can we as citizens own our own resource flows? How can we own our sustainability? And how can we as citizens actually produce our own sustainability and not rely on experts to do that? And so I would like to suggest that this idea of civic ecology, our own community systems, is the way to do that. So you may notice in the brochure that I'm listed as a civic ecologist. I'm the only one in the room. But by the time I'm done with you all, you will all be civic ecologists too. Don't worry. So civic ecology is the integrated web of flows and interactions, of energy, of water, of nutrients, of food, of waste, of information, of money, of culture. All these things that pulse through communities, through great communities, through memorable communities. It's kind of abstract because it's not about buildings. It's not about that pollution stuff, the hardware stuff. This is about community software, okay? These are the things that flow through all great communities and actually integrate. So it's not just an energy system or a water system, but combine them. It's Watergy, okay? All these things tie together when you start to get local experts designing them because they realize that they live their lives in this milieu of all these things happening. And so this is also about civil society, okay, civic ecology. And it's about creating human ecosystems that integrate very closely nature and social and economic systems. Okay, so civic ecology. So at this point, if I hadn't hurt myself recently, I would go down on one knee and beg your forgiveness. I have a little confession to make. So I'm one of these experts. Okay, I'm an architect and a planner, and as you heard, I do these projects all over the world. And I'm one of these experts that's out there saying that really the answer is green buildings and green streets, electric cars, sort of hardware, green hardware. And I'm here to tell you that I'm wrong, or at least if I'm not wrong, I'm only partially right. That there's more to this than the hardware, there's the software. It's the software of the community, the social capital that's going to make all these flows happen, and that is really going to respond to Professor Walter's observation about loss of meaning in the environment. And so I'd like to suggest that there are some shifts that we need to make in this green box paradigm that we're going to open up. The first is a shift from the idea that technology is the only answer, that technology is the driver. We need to shift that from technology to shared community values if we're going to do this kind of work, okay? We also need to get over the idea that our basic ethic is about efficiency. We need to move from efficiency and what's the measurable to an equal concern with sufficiency and what's perceivable. Because when you start to involve human values, you can start to have those discussions about what is sufficient. And finally, the very basis for design needs to shift from this idea of better science and greener hardware to better democracy and more socially integrated software. Okay? And so this is a little bit like not science fiction, but social friction. We need to get away from the fiction that science is going to solve all our problems and start getting social friction to happen in a good way, rubbing those minds together to generate sparks and the great ideas that come from local investment in our place. So think about this. Hardware-based infrastructure, pipes, conduits, all that stuff that we invest a heck of a lot of money in, the minute they open and begin to do what they're supposed to do, they degrade. They don't lose value, but they begin to degrade. And soon, what was once a bright, shiny construction project is now slated on a capital improvements list for either replacement or maintenance down the road. It begins to degrade. Software-based infrastructure, on the other hand, if it's well done and if it's well managed, actually does the opposite. It upgrades. Why? Because it constitutes a learning ecology. It's a community of people who try things, they fail, they succeed, they build up a whole store of knowledge. They extend the relationships throughout the community, and they develop those relationships, and the whole system gets better. It upgrades. So, what would life be like in a civic ecosystem? I'd like to tell you a little story about a place in which I used to live. It's called Chestnut Hill, and it's an absolutely marvelous neighborhood. It's in the northwest of Philadelphia. This is a 300-year-old community. It was founded in 1690. I would say they know something about sustainability, wouldn't you? So look at these buildings. These buildings are probably 100, 150 years old. That stone was quarried about 3 blocks away from where this photo was taken. So this is a community that was thinking about sustainability a long time ago. And they have beautiful architecture, but I swore I'm not going to talk about green buildings, so that's the end of the building part of the presentation. Because I really want to talk about the software in this community. And the software begins with social capital. By the way, that is my daughter standing there next to her Superman. And my daughter is now 13. And she grew up in a civic ecology. It works, guys. Look. It's incredible. So this is really an incredible place, and I could wax eloquent on and on about all the community systems that really animate this community. They have a Main Street program. They manage their resources. They have a local food. They have a lot of local farmers. They have a year-round farmers market, lots of local businesses. But I want to talk about something that I was actually involved in the making, and that is a community recycling system that grew into something much more. Chestnut Hill, city of Philadelphia, like most cities at the time, had curbside pickup of recyclables once a week, but most people found that they were piling up all this junk in their garage because the city didn't actually pick up most of what they accumulated. And so a bunch of us got together and self-organized a community system that consisted of this. Once a month at a community place, we would all gather and we would ask people to come and bring all their recyclables, and we would bundle them up, and we would partner with the city who supplied these trucks, and we would drive this stuff to a recycling plant and we would sell it. And we would get money, and we would bring the money back into the community, and we would use it to fund a senior center, to plant street trees, and to do things like build a kids' park. This park, by the way, was designed by the kids who actually go to the school here. So what we did was we created a civic ecosystem that involved all aspects, three legs of the sustainability stool: economy, ecology, and social capital. Pretty incredible. Now, like all really great systems designs, they never are frozen in time, neither was this one. Somebody came up with this brilliant idea of partnering with the city and placing these little computer chips in the weekly curbside recyclers, so that when the city comes to pick up your recycling, your bin is weighed, and you develop credit on a little credit card that you can use for discounts at locally owned businesses within the community. So now we're turning trash to cash, but in a way that enhances the local economic multiplier. This was all designed by citizens, by civil society. There were no outside experts involved in this. This system exists until today. So all of this suggests that there's maybe a very simple equation about sustainability. Hardware plus software equals sustainability, and you really need to pay attention to both of them. And so it also suggests some underlying principles. Communities that we're working in, and again, I've been doing this a long, long time, there's really basically 5 principles. The first one is systems design. Number 2, focused on a place. Number 3, there's a new social contract in place here. This is not just voting or paying taxes. This is way beyond that. This is taking ownership of your commons and designing things and being responsible for managing it well into the future. A new social contract. It's also about matching needs with assets. So every community has these shared needs, the things that people agree, boy, it would be great to have, or we really got to do this, or we're in trouble. But every community also has local experts. Our community had some local experts. Many of the communities we work in, as we heard in the previous presentation, it's not about cookie cutter, it's about the indigenous ideas that sort of generate and bubble up within a community. And finally, it's dynamic. These things are never done. They never will be done. Cities are never done. Neighborhoods are never done. And so we need to get over that and make sure that we're always designing open-ended systems. So civic ecology. So all of this sort of begs some questions. What if the way to start designing in your community didn't have to do with pre-assuming that the answer was green buildings, that it was green streets, that it was new electric cars or Priuses or anything like that? But what if it started by asking 5 very simple questions? Where are we now as a community? Where would we like to be? How do we get there? How do we know if we're getting there, and who wants to help find out? And so what if the design process of a new community looked something like this, where you had a group of people sitting around a table designing their future flows. Form follows flows. And what if some of these people didn't know each other, like in this example in Damascus, Oregon, not too far from here? Some of them don't even like each other. This is a community that is politically fractured, and yet people who weren't particularly on speaking terms got together and began to design their resource flows. And they began to produce maps that looked like this. So what if the map of a new community, a sustainable community, looked like this? There's no buildings, there's no hardware on here. This is all about flows. This is a really interesting way, I think, to design a community. And here you go again. Great ideas that came out of here. Somebody bubbled up the idea, let's create a Damascus-wide farming co-op. And because we have so many different levels of income, let's allow people to pay through money, through barter, or through Damascus dollars, or as they like to call them, damn dollars. Somebody else came up with the purple bucket, community-wide recycling. I think it was the mayor's idea. And I understand that he wasn't necessarily the most popular mayor, but he came up with this wonderful idea. And guess what? They just started a nonprofit, and they are now doing business plans for all of these projects and more that they just designed over a table about a month ago, and they're going to be raising money to actually build these things. So, no idea worth spreading doesn't raise more questions than it answers, and so I'd like to finish with some questions. What if this isn't about hardware, but it's all about creating better software? What if this isn't a liberal thing or a conservative thing? What if sustainability isn't tied to any kind of party, but it's really a deeply shared enterprise within each community? And what if the basis for it came from our heart and our souls? And what if we are the infrastructure that we've been waiting for? So folks, you are now officially graduated as a civic ecologist. I would like you to all go out in the world and start thinking about this in your own communities. Design your flows. It's the way to a sustainable future. Thank you very much.